Now, obviously, your dad was probably one of your biggest inspirations, biggest part of your life. How is your relationship with your dad?
Yeah, the fantastic, flawless. I think I had the best father on the planet. I was very fortunate to be raised by the greatest man on earth, and my children will be very fortunate to be raised by me because I'm the new most greatest man on earth. So,
By the way, your dad used to be a professional chess player, right?
correct.
Do you know how to play chess like your dad?
Not like my dad. No,
Yeah.
I can play chess. So.
But you can play?
Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, she's gonna after this
If
podcast, she wants to challenge
if I
you.
challenge you to a chess match,
Get the board
would
right
you-
now. Do it on camera. No,
No,
don't
we
do it
will,
off
we
camera.
will.
Get the board.
We'll do it right
Get
after
the board.
this.
Get the board. Put it here.
We'll do a wager match.
But don't do it after. Do it now.
No, because
Okay, we'll
it's
bring
coming. It's
that.
coming.
Bring
The,
it.
the chess is coming.
Bring the board.
Obviously, your relationship with your dad was great, but this is something I heard you say, and it kind of shocked me. Your dad was a spy.
My father worked for the CIA. He was a linguist.
What's that?
A linguist. He spoke 5 languages. My father did.
Wow.
You see?
Yeah.
What?
But he spoke them for a reason. So my father was a native English speaker. He only spoke English, and then they took him into the Air Force. He passed. When you join the Air Force, you do a test. He did fantastically in the IQ test. He's top 1 percentile, so they moved him over to a specialized division to learn languages, and he learned Russian, German, Spanish, a bunch of languages.
Did you learn anything about that? Like, did he ever talk to you about it?
He told me that every single thing that you're watching on the news is a lie. He told me that they keep us in the dark. He told me to resist the slave mind. He told me that when you watch the news, your only goal should be to understand what they want you to believe, not to believe it.
Yeah.
And he made it very clear to me the Matrix existed even way back then.
That's very interesting. So your father wasn't rich.
No.
And I heard you said somewhere when he passed away, unfortunately, like he had no money.
He had $12 in his pocket.
That's when, wow.
That was it. Exactly $12.
$12 to his name.
To his name.
This is something that you always push, like, you need to get rich, you need to get rich. In that situation, like, what would you say to that? You know, because some people might say, well, if you're pushing this and your role model is your father that didn't have money.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. The goal of a son is to be a built-on better version of his father, right?
Yeah.
So my goal as my father's successor is to be even more successful than he was, to be a better version of him.
Yeah.
I do my very best. I still think he was better than me in most regards, but in the one area I have surpassed him is clearly financially. But my father had a different mission, and he was focused on what he did, and he did a fantastic job of it. But yeah, he was not financially successful. I'm actually glad for that because I'm glad I was raised completely poor, and I was raised broke poor. I wasn't raised, everyone goes, I was raised poor. No. I was raised completely broke. We were in a homeless hostel, and we changed country, and we were living with a bunch of Kosovan war refugees, and we had a really bad story. But that's been good for me. That was part of the life plan that God made for me. But yeah, my father was not financially successful. I am, and that's actually plaguing me a bit because I don't want my kids to be raised rich. So I have to find a solution for this. So
Yeah, and I was going to say, obviously, this is a famous quote. Hard times create strong men.
Yep.
Strong men create good times, and good times create weak men.
Yes.
Now, you're a strong man.
Yes. Thank you.
Are you going to create weak men?
Yeah, so I'm going to create good times for my life, but I'm very conscious of it. So because I'm very conscious of it, there's no way my children will be raised rich.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are you going to like make them kind of struggle in a sense?
I'm going to make them struggle for real. Not in a sense. They're going to struggle for real. And I mean it for real because they have to understand there is no safety net. I never had a safety net. They can't have one. So I'm going to make sure that they struggle for real. They're all going to be UFC champions. Every single one of my children, you're going to see them in the UFC. You're going to see the name. So they're all going to fight because they don't have to work. I have money. So I'm going to make sure they pursue struggle in the hardest possible combat sport on earth. That's what's going to happen.
I'm talking about that because Lana doesn't know too much. And I think it's such a beautiful story. How did your dad die? Because it's a beautiful story. Just Lana doesn't know it.
Yeah, he was playing chess. He was sitting at a chess tournament. He had won his first 2 games. He was in the middle of his 3rd game, and he was winning. It was a winning position, and he stood up to go toilet, went in the bathroom, came out about a minute later, said call an ambulance, and unfortunately passed out and never woke up again. So, and the ambulance got there quickly. They got there in like 3 or 4 minutes. They were really close by. So he died at the chessboard, which I actually think is good. That's where
I think that's a beautiful story.
he lived his whole life at the chessboard, and I'm glad he died at the chessboard. That's where he
it's like
he died doing what
he loves. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And he died at war, which I also think is the masculine. It's the masculine way. It's the masculine imperative. You can hope the best you can hope for is to die at war. So.
Obviously, I want to move past this because I'm kind of an emotional person. When I hear these stories, I kind of like it. Kind of gives me goosebumps. But if you could have one last conversation with your dad, what would you tell him?
That's interesting because my father always had. Me and him, we never had conversations in which I'd say, "Hey, Dad, I think I'm going to do this," and he'd be like, "Wow, really, son? I'm so proud of you." It was just like, "Well, duh." It was always very much like that.
Yeah, you're
like,
gonna
hey,
make it.
Hey, Dad, I'm the most Googled man in the world, and I've got hundreds of millions of dollars. Duh, you're Tate. Whatever. Like it was, his expectations of me, but they weren't in an arrogant way. They were just so ridiculously high. It was just, well, obviously. So I don't think we talk much about the material successes of anything. My father would be happiest knowing that his bloodline is secure and that I exist, and my goal is to have 20 sons, and that's what he'd be happiest to know, and that he's done his job, and to know that I pay respect to him every chance I get, and I mention him as much as possible. And he did a fantastic job with me. The great thing about children is that if you do a good job with them, a truly exceptional job, they allow you to live forever. Because my father is discussed on the biggest podcast in the world repeatedly.
Yeah.
Because of me.
No, I love that.
Which is good. I'm such a fantastic person that they discuss my origin, which means my dad is discussed. So if I do a fantastic job with my son, I will be discussed on the biggest podcast of the future, and you get to stay alive forever.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the end goal, and I feel that I'm doing him justice and the ancestors justice and the last name justice. In fact, I know I am. Of course, he'd be exceptionally proud, and then he'd probably whoop me at chess, and then he'd go back to wherever he's chilling. So that would be it.